Barry Gibb and Barbra Streisand created one of the biggest albums of the 1980s. Guilty sold 12 million copies and gave Streisand her biggest hit ever. But in 2025, at age 79, Barry finally admitted the truth. They fought so badly in the studio, she almost quit 3 times. He told her to take it or leave it. She told him he didn't understand women. They screamed at each other for 2 hours. And now, decades later, Barry revealed his biggest regret about their partnership, something he says still haunts him today. Barry Allen Crompton Gibb was born on September 1, 1946, on the Isle of Man. His family didn't have much. His father, Hugh Gibb, played drums but barely made money. His mother, Barbara, used to sing in dance halls but gave it up to raise her children. They lived above a chemist shop, squeezed into a small room near Douglas Pier. Another family lived with them in that tight space. The United Kingdom was still struggling after the war. Food was limited, jobs were unstable, and money was always short. Hugh worked whatever he could find, sometimes driving a bakery truck, sometimes helping patients in a mental hospital. But none of it was steady, and they kept moving from place to place, just trying to survive. When Barry was just 18 months old, everything almost ended. He was in the kitchen when he pulled down a tablecloth and spilled a pot of boiling tea all over himself. The burns were terrible. They covered 25% of his tiny body. The doctors didn't think he'd make it. They said he had 20 minutes to live. He slipped into a coma in Noble's Hospital and stayed there for over 2 months. When he finally woke up, he didn't speak. Not for 2 years, no words, no crying, nothing. The trauma was so deep, it erased his memory of those early years. All that remained were the scars. In 1955, when Barry was 9, the family moved to Manchester. They lived in a tiny house at Keppel Road. Barry had to share a small room with his younger twin brothers, Robin and Maurice. It was so tight they could barely move. Fights were common. Tempers flared. They were 3 boys squeezed into one bed, in a house always one step away from being taken back by the landlord. Their neighbors remembered how Hugh would bring home stale bread from a delivery job and sell it to get by. Robin started getting in trouble. He set fires in the neighborhood. He even tried to light one under their shared bed. Then came another close call. In 1957, Barry and his brothers went to a movie theater. During the matinee, a fire broke out. Flames spread fast. Everything turned to smoke and screams. The kids panicked. The lights went out. Barry and his brothers crawled across the floor, barely breathing. They escaped through the back as the ceiling began to fall. Some children didn't make it. That fire stayed in Barry's dreams for years. By 1958, things got worse. Hugh lost another job. They were out of options. With just 6 weeks' notice, the family packed up and left England. They boarded a ship called the Fair Sea and headed to Australia. Barry was only 12. He had to drop out of Oswald Road Primary School without even saying goodbye to his friends. The sea voyage took 5 weeks. They landed in Redcliffe, Queens, Radhamati, Sains, Clay, Queensland, carrying nothing but a few suitcases and their instruments. Their new home in Crib Island was one of the poorest places in the city. Years later, it was bulldozed to make room for Brisbane Airport. The place vanished, just like the life Barry had known. Life in Australia was hard. The heat was intense. The food was different. Barry felt like a stranger in every way. They had no money. Hugh became a photographer. Barbara took small jobs. The boys made music using whatever they could find. Tea chests, broomsticks. They played at the Redcliffe Speedway while crowds threw coins on the dirt. That's how they survived. Their accents made them targets, but their voices made people stop and listen. In 1959, Barry bought an $8 toy guitar from Woolworth's. That guitar changed everything. He didn't know how to tune it the right way, so he made up his own style. He wrote a song called "Let Me Love You." That same year, radio DJ Bill Gates heard it and recorded a demo of Barry singing. That demo launched everything. It was raw, it was homemade, but it had something real. Then came a moment that could have ruined it all. In 1960, Barry and his brothers stole penknives from Woolworth's. They were just kids, desperate for better instruments. As they stood on Red Cliff Pier, Barry made a choice. He threw the stolen knives into the sea. That moment split his life in two. Either he would become a thief, or he would become a musician. He chose music. By 1962, they were called the Bee Gees. Not because of their initials, but after the two men who helped them, Bill Gates and Bill Good. They performed at Red Cliff Speedway during races. They earned 5 shillings. Crowds heckled them. Some threw coins, others just laughed. But they kept playing. Gates and Good signed them to a deal on March 15, 1959. They got better gear, they got more shows, and they got tougher. Barry dropped out of school in 1961 at age 16. His parents were furious. They had moved to Surfer's Paradise. Barry worked brutal jobs, shearing sheep, working farms, sweating through 12-hour days handling hundreds of animals. He had dyslexia, though nobody knew at the time. Reading music was nearly impossible, so he learned everything by ear. That became his secret weapon. With every dollar he earned, he bought better gear. He didn't tell his parents. He said it was for food, but it was always for music. In 1963, Barry got his first record deal. He was only 16. Festival Records signed them, but the label didn't believe in them. Their first single, The Battle of the Blue and Gray, got some radio love at first, but the label only pressed 2,000 copies. They lied and said only 500 sold. Then they pulled all promotion. The label kept ownership of the songs until 2005. That meant the Bee Gees made almost nothing from their early music, even after they became global stars. In 1964, DJ Bill Gates started calling them the Bee Gees on air without asking. Barry was furious. He marched into the radio station and demanded it stop. He even threatened legal action through his father. The argument lasted 2 hours. Barry wouldn't leave until he got a signed agreement that no one else could control their name. Later, the name became Bee Gees, but that moment taught Barry something big. He had to protect the music, no matter what. Then, in 1965, the song Wine and Women gave them their first chart hit. But behind the scenes, Barry was falling apart. He had started drinking. Cheap wine helped him fight nerves in the studio. One day, he collapsed during a session. His brothers had to carry him out while the musicians waited. It cost them $50, money they didn't have. Producer Bill Shepard thought Barry might not make it. Some at festival even talked about replacing him. But the song reached number 47. They had a chance. Then came a disaster nobody expected. In 1966, Barry released Spicks and Specks. It became their biggest Australian hit. It reached number 5 on the charts, but critics said it copied the Beatles' Nowhere Man. Newspapers ran headlines accusing them of stealing. EMI threatened legal action. Radio stations banned their music. Barry broke down in an interview and admitted he was inspired by the Beatles. He said every songwriter takes from somewhere, but the damage was done. When they went to England, the press called them copycats. That same year, Barry made another huge mistake. He married Maureen Bates. He was 19. She was 16. They had no money. Their income was under $10 a week. Within months, they were evicted from their apartment. They couldn't pay $180 in rent. They moved into a van owned by Maurice's girlfriend. They parked behind venues and slept on mattresses in the back. They ate bread and milk. Maureen's parents wanted the marriage annulled. Landlords said the couple damaged the apartment during fights. Barry didn't ask his brothers for help. He was too proud and too ashamed. In January 1967, the Gibb family boarded the SS Fair Sky in Sydney with just $25 in their pockets and a dream of reaching England. The trip lasted 34 days, ending on February 6th, but every night on that long voyage, the brothers sang on deck to pay their way. They were basically busking their way across oceans, unaware that back home in Australia, their single Spicks and Specks had suddenly reached #1 in Melbourne while they were still at sea. It was a strange moment of being both penniless and famous at the same time. Their father, Hugh, had mailed demo tapes to NEMS Enterprises back in November 1966, and by sheer chance, Robert Stigwood received the package just as the ship docked. 3 days after arriving, the brothers auditioned for him and signed with Polydor the same day, transforming from desperate immigrants into recording artists in only 72 hours. It's suddenly 2 hours. Their first big UK release, New York Mining Disaster 1941, came out on April 14, 1967, but it arrived with a twist. Atco Records sent out promo copies with blank labels, hinting only that it was an English group whose name started with B. Radio DJs believed it was a secret Beatles track and played it constantly under that assumption. The trick worked so well that George Harrison bought a copy himself, thinking it sounded like the Beatles, later telling Maurice Gibb at a party how remarkable the resemblance was. Maurice later admitted, "New York Mining Disaster 1941 was a total rip-off of the Beatles. We were so influenced by them." Some stations even considered banning it for Beatles mimicry. The ploy was allegedly thought up by Ahmet Ertegun and Jerry Wexler at Atlantic Records, because they knew anything linked to the Beatles would explode on air. By 1968, Barry Gibb was already slipping into a dark place, while writing "To Love Somebody." That song, later covered by hundreds of artists, came out of jealousy and depression. Barry obsessed over Robin's vibrato voice, which he felt he could never reach, and Maurice's ability to master any instrument within days while he played only rhythm guitar. He started to isolate himself for hours during sessions, building harmonies and arrangements alone. The irony was that his inferior songwriting became the band's greatest strength, while his brother's superior performance skills often went unnoticed, a dynamic that left scars he carried for decades. The making of the 1969 double album Odessa turned violent. Manager Robert Stigwood picked Barry's 1st of May over Robin's Lamplight as the lead single, sparking furious fights over credit and control. On March 19, 1969, Robin walked out mid-production, leaving Barry and Maurice to finish an album they had already poured over $70,000 of their own savings into. Barry tried to replace Robin with session singer Peter Mason for the 3-part harmonies in June 1969, but Stigwood shut it down within days. Lawsuits over Robin's contract meant he couldn't record solo until September 1969. The album's critical acclaim didn't stop it from failing commercially, nearly bankrupting the group and tearing their brotherhood apart for over a year. Then came the tabloid storm of Barry Gibb's affair with Lulu in 1969. She had married Maurice on February 18, 1969, at St. James's Church in Gerrard's Cross, with thousands of fans surrounding the building and trapping the couple inside for 10 minutes after the ceremony. Barry had opposed the marriage, saying they were too young at 19 and 20. Within months, as his own marriage crumbled, Barry began pursuing Lulu, while Maurice spiraled into alcoholism. The British press savaged Barry with headlines calling him predatory and manipulative. The scandal dented their image and album sales in 1969 and 1970. In 1970, the brothers reunited with Lonely Days, hitting the top 5, but Barry began using cocaine at IBC Studios in London to manage crippling performance anxiety. They even joked about their habits with nicknames Pot for Barry, Pills for Robin, Piss for Maurice. Atlantic Records was known to supply artists with drugs, and the Bee Gees admitted later, "We were not really that good at anything without a pill or without a drink. It was destroying us." Barry's wife Linda saved him from worse addiction by flushing his drugs down the toilet. How Can You Mend a Broken Heart? Spent 4 weeks at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in 1971, but came from Barry's divorce from Maureen Bates. They had married August 22, 1966, when both were 19, but the marriage collapsed under touring and infidelity allegations. Court files showed Barry gone 200 days a year. The July 1970 settlement stripped him of most assets, including their Sydney home, leaving him virtually bankrupt, and the heartbreak bled straight into the song's lyrics. The January 1973 album, Life in a Tin Can, marked their lowest point. Recorded in Los Angeles, it failed to produce a single UK or US hit. Saw a New Morning peaked only at number 94 on the Billboard Hot 100. RSO shelved their planned follow-up album entirely. By mid-1973, Barry pawned his prized Gibson acoustic guitar for $50 just to buy groceries and admitted having suicidal thoughts. They ended up performing in small English variety clubs, with Barry later joking, "We ended up in Batley's Variety Club in West Yorkshire." Late in 1974, Barry discovered Robert Stigwood was taking 25% of their gross income while also owning their label. Audits revealed over $16 million in unpaid royalties and inflated studio fees. Barry accused him of treating us like his private Fort Knox in Stigwood's London office, but legal advisors warned breaking the contract would cost more than the disputed money. This fight set up their massive $136 million lawsuit against Stigwood in October 1980, the largest in music history at the time. During the January 20th, 1975 sessions at Criteria Studios in Miami, producer Arif Mardin asked if anyone could scream in tune on Nights on Broadway. Barry tried and found the falsetto that would define their sound. Secretly, he was suffering from vocal cord polyps and underwent emergency surgery at Mount Sinai Hospital in Miami in March 1975, performed by Dr. Steven Zeitels. He hid it from his brothers and the press, fearing it would slow their comeback. The Saturday Night Fever soundtrack in early 1977 was born from a 48-hour drug-fueled writing sprint at Château de Hérouville in France. They wrote If I Can't Have You, Night Fever, and More Than a Woman virtually in a single weekend. Stigwood and Bill Oakes flipped out when they heard the demos. Those songs produced 4 consecutive #1 hits and made Barry Gibb the only songwriter to achieve so many chart toppers in succession. The album went on to sell over 40 million copies worldwide. Stayin' Alive dominated charts for 4 weeks in 1978, but drew plagiarism lawsuits. The main case, Sell vs. Gibb, became a landmark in copyright law. Though the Bee Gees won, they settled at least 3 other disputes out of court with legal fees and settlements costing over $2 million between 1978 and 1980. Barry said the stress fueled his substance abuse. On July 7, 1979, they played to 56,000 at Dodger Stadium, their biggest show ever, with Andy Gibb joining the encore. A backstage brawl over fan access left Barry with a severe hand injury that had to be bandaged mid-show. Los Angeles Times photographer George Rose captured him playing with the bandaged hand, while Barbra Streisand borrowed a camera to shoot close-ups. By 1979, Barry was worth $50 million at just 33, but IRS audits found $15 million in unpaid taxes routed through the Bahamas, Switzerland, and the Isle of Man. He paid $8.2 million plus $3.7 million in penalties in a confidential settlement. The stress worsened tensions and his medication use. Then, the disco backlash exploded. On July 12, 1979, at Chicago's Comiskey Park, Steve Dahl's Disco Demolition Night drew 47,795 official attendees, but an estimated 75,000 stormed in to burn records, many by the Bee Gees. On August 15, 1979, Barry staged his own protest outside a Chicago radio station by burning rock albums and saying, "If they can destroy our music, we can destroy theirs." The stunt backfired, reinforcing the image of the Bee Gees as arrogant disco villains and leading to concert cancellations. On March 10, 1988, Andy Gibb died at John Radcliffe Hospital in Oxford at just 35 days after his birthday. Years of cocaine use at $1,000 per day had weakened his heart. He had been living in Robin's carriage house trying to recover after rehab in 1985. Barry blamed himself for not intervening sooner. The loss also contributed to their father Hugh's fatal heart attack soon afterward. Barry said he lost his best friend. Robin Gibb died on May 20, 2012, at 62 from colorectal cancer, complicated by kidney failure and pneumonia. Barry discovered only in those final hospital visits that Robin had been secretly battling opioid addiction since the 1970s to manage chronic intestinal pain. Robin had claimed a spectacular recovery in early 2012 while working on his Titanic Requiem, but fell into a coma after March surgery. Barry sang "The End of the Rainbow" to him during his last visit, getting only faint thumbs-up responses. Maurice Gibb had already died on January 12, 2003, at Mount Sinai Medical Center in Miami at 53 after a twisted bowel led to a heart attack during surgery. Barry said, "Mo died in 2 days, so that was very quick and a great shock to everyone." Maurice had been the group's mediator and extrovert, and his sudden death ended the Bee Gees as a trio forever. In 1983, Barry Gibb thought he was about to make his big solo mark. He started working on his first solo album, Now Voyager. But what was supposed to be a smooth project quickly turned into a nightmare. He spent 9 long months recording in Miami and Hollywood studios, changing and redoing songs over and over. At one point, some tracks were recorded 15 times. The budget started at $500,000 but ended up over $2.5 million. MCA Records was furious. They had signed Barry for multiple albums in a big money deal, but things got so out of control that they shut the whole thing down and let him release just this one. The album only reached number 72 on the Billboard 200, making it one of 1984's biggest commercial failures. Barry later said all the non-stop studio work drained their energy and focus completely. Just a few years earlier, in 1980, Barry had worked with Barbra Streisand on Guilty, which sold 15 million copies around the world. But behind the scenes, it was chaos. They argued heavily in the studio. Streisand didn't like the lyrics of Woman in Love. She said the line, "It's a right I defend," over and over again, was too bold. At one point, she almost quit the project 3 different times. Barry, who was usually calm, finally snapped and told her, "Take it or leave it." The worst fight happened when she told him he didn't know how to write for women. They shouted for 2 hours straight, but in the end, the album became her biggest success and even won a Grammy. In 1985, Barry worked with Kenny Rogers on Eyes That See in the Dark. The album sold over 2 million copies and went double platinum. But soon after, Rogers found out Barry had taken a 15% royalty and full publishing rights. Rogers felt cheated and sued him, saying Barry had hidden the deal and owed him $3.2 million. The case ended quietly in 1986 with a private settlement. It broke their friendship completely, and they never worked together again. By 2016, Barry's voice had changed. At 69, his famous falsetto had dropped nearly 2 octaves. His comeback album In the Now reached number 2 in the UK, but it was revealed that heavy auto-tune and pitch correction had been used. Even his live performances had digital help. Barry admitted in a BBC interview that he had been hiding behind technology. It was a strange turn for someone who helped create the authentic sound of disco. Then, in 2020, a documentary dropped a bombshell about Barry's marriage. He had been with Linda Gray for almost 50 years, but in the 1990s, their marriage almost fell apart. The documentary showed he had been linked to a backup singer named Sarah M. In 1997, Linda found love letters and hotel receipts. She kicked him out, and they separated for 6 months. Then the tabloids published photos of Barry and the other woman. Linda talked to divorce lawyers and nearly went after half his $90 million fortune. They finally made peace after Barry agreed to marriage counseling and added Linda's name to all his properties. He later said she saved his life. In 1997, Barry and the Bee Gees were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It should have been a joyful day, but Barry had a bad arthritis flare-up and could barely stand. He was 50 years old and had to perform while sitting in a chair. He still sang "Stayin' Alive" and "How Deep Is Your Love." Even though he was in so much pain, doctors told him not to go. But he said he didn't want to miss it, even if it meant suffering through the whole 3-hour event. In 2014, Barry went on his mythology tour. It was a huge success, making over $20 million from just 15 shows. But on February 27, 2013, during the Australian leg, something terrifying happened. While singing Jive Talkin' in front of 14,000 people, Barry collapsed on stage. He had a vertigo attack and was rushed to the hospital. Doctors said it came from years of loud stage monitors damaging his inner ear. Even though they told him to stop, Barry kept going. His son, Stephen, and niece, Samantha, joined him for tributes to his late brothers. In Brisbane alone, 32,000 tickets sold out in minutes. In January 2021, Barry released Greenfields, the Gibb Brothers Songbook, Volume 1. It hit number 1 in Australia. He was 74 years, 4 months, and 17 days old, making him the oldest artist ever to do that. But behind the scenes, he was dealing with Lyme disease. He had been bitten by a tick in 2018 on his Miami property. The illness gave him joint pain, fatigue, and brain fog. He could only record in short bursts and often had to lie down between takes. Producer Dave Cobb said they planned everything around Barry's good days. But Barry pushed through, working with Dolly Parton, Keith Urban, and Alison Krauss. The album got 4 out of 5 stars from The Guardian. Then came December 2023. Barry was honored at the Kennedy Center. During his speech, he shocked the audience by saying he had always felt like a fraud. He said he never believed he deserved the praise. He felt guilty for outliving his 3 brothers, Andy, Maurice, and Robin. He said he often questioned if his solo success was real, or just because of the Bee Gees. That night, Chris Stapleton and Little Big Town sang his songs. Barry sat in the presidential box, crying as they played. President Biden even met him backstage to thank him for everything. In January 2025, Barry, now 79, surprised fans with one last solo tour called The Last Dance. But along with the good news came something serious. He revealed that he had just gone through a heart procedure. Doctors had found arrhythmia, irregular heartbeats caused by stress. He had a catheter ablation done at Mount Sinai in Miami. It took 6 weeks to recover, and he wasn't even allowed to speak loudly during that time. On Instagram, he shared a hospital photo and wrote, "Sometimes the heart needs tuning like a guitar." The tour was limited to just 12 shows, with a heart monitor team on standby at every one. Even with $140 million in net worth by 2025, Barry stayed quiet about one thing. Since the 1980s, he had been donating millions to addiction recovery programs in honor of his brother Andy, who died at 30 from a drug-related heart attack in 1988. In 2024, Barry finally admitted he had been secretly funding the Andy Gibb Memorial Foundation, the American Heart Association, and cancer charities. He also raised millions for diabetes research through his Love and Hope charity. Every year, black tie galas were held, featuring performances by family. He said it was the best way he could keep Andy's memory alive. In 2025, Barry Gibb quietly opened up about something that had been weighing on him for years. He called his work with Barbra Streisand life-changing, but also admitted he carried one big regret that never stopped bothering him. Back in 1980, they created Guilty, and it was a massive hit. The album gave them 3 top 10 songs and went on to sell more than 12 million copies around the world. It became Barbra's most successful pop album ever. But for Barry, it didn't feel complete. He said they should have worked together 5 more times. Not just once, not with a 25-year gap between Guilty and Guilty Pleasures. That long pause from 1980 to 2005 felt like a lost chapter. He believed they had something special and let too many years slip by without capturing it again. Every time he thought about it, he said he wished they'd done more, especially more ballads that could show off Barbra's voice the way Woman in Love did. That one song became her biggest hit for a reason, and Barry knew exactly why. Her voice was perfect for it, and he always felt he should have given her more songs like that. When they finally reunited in 2005, even after all that time, the chemistry was still there. Guilty Pleasures didn't try to copy the past, but it didn't need to. It reached number 5 on the Billboard charts and earned gold certification. It proved something that Barry had always suspected. The magic hadn't gone anywhere. They just didn't use it enough.